Welcome to the Digital Runway, where we bring together beauty, fashion, tech, and AI with business and marketing insights. It's an email newsletter and a video podcast. I'm Janey Park, a global beauty and fashion business executive, turned content creator, consultant, writer, speaker, podcaster. We wear a lot of multi-hyphenate hats these days, but I've had global experience at brands like LVMH, Elizabeth Arden, Lip and Cut, where I built, grown, and scaled brands and retailers. And I'm here today to help you future-proof yourself and your career in beauty, fashion, tech, and AI. I'm super excited because today we're diving into the world of luxury fashion, or not even just luxury, but fashion sourcing with someone who has been at the forefront of the industry, Gab Waller. She's an Australian entrepreneur, redefining luxury fashion and sourcing, not only for Hollywood elite, but also she is building with which I'm very excited to tap into that part in particular. But welcome, Gab.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you. I actually first learned about Gab through a Vogue business article that Maddie or Madeline Schultz wrote about, and she called you the power sourcer. So, on that note, I'm just going to give you a little bit of hype and share a little bit about your highlights. You're the go to sourcer for a lot of A-list clients and Hollywood celebrities, from Hailey Bieber, Khloe Kardashian, Sophia Richie Grange, and many others. You're also the founder of SourceBuy, an AI powered sourcing platform that's in development, and it is set to revolutionize fashion sourcing, which I mentioned before. Do you want to do a quick intro of yourself and then we'll get into the questions?
Absolutely. Amazing. So I am Gab. I am the founder of Gab Waller, which is a global fashion sourcing company. I've been doing that for 6 years now. And most recently, I am now the founder and CEO of SourceBuy, which I'm sure we'll dive into a lot more. But essentially, SourceBuy is an AI automated all-in-one platform that streamlines every aspect of the fashion sourcing process. So very much all about fashion sourcing. It's been heavily part of my career for some time now. You may have noticed by my voice, I am Australian, but I do live in Los Angeles. I've been living here for 3 years.
I love that. Actually, when you were speaking, it reminded me of one of my friends because the first time I heard the word Arvo, let's get a coffee at the Arvo. Is that a cafe?
So good. Australians love to abbreviate everything. So we just shorten anything and everything. So afternoon is Arvo.
Yes. And I remember just like, oh, that's a really interesting name for a cafe. We're speaking in English, but whether or not it's Australian or Texas or Southern English is all very different in terms of the nuances. For our live audience, so if you would drop your questions in the comments, we'll answer them during the Q&A. I know this is a crazy week. A lot of people are at Miami Art Basel, whether or not you're in the art and fashion scene, but also tech, Web3, and 8. And if you're joining live, please make sure to network in comments. That's the whole reason why we have this conversation live, for inclusivity and also access. Want to future-proof your brand in beauty, fashion, tech, AI, and business? You are in the right place. Welcome to the Digital Runway. Whether someone is working in the industry or just obsessed with beauty and fashion, every week I write a newsletter, 3 pieces of news under Runway Radar and the Runway Diaries, which is behind the scenes. The newest edition is Janey's AI edit with ChatGPT prompt. I give all this information away completely for free. Check out the Digital Runway email newsletter in the caption. I want to get into a segment that I call Digital Decoded. So in this segment, we simplify tech buzzwords into bite-sized and easy concepts to understand. I have a lot of friends and colleagues in the beauty fashion industry, and I'm sure with yourself too, Gab, when you start explaining A, they are just A, not interested, or B is just too much. Have you found that?
A little bit, yes. It's interesting because I do feel that it had been around for some time, but 2024 is really the year that I think it's become a lot more talked about and spoken about. And I think going into 2025, it's really going to explode. So I think even just like little things such as ChatGPT, I think that only became like the norm this year. So I think people are starting to want to know and want to learn more about it just for themselves personally.
Yeah, 100%. I think 2025, digital fashion, also wearable tech. We're going to go through 3 different words for digital decoded. And after each one, feel free to jump in if you have any comments. But the first one, which is directly related to you, AI fashion sourcing. And obviously you're building SourceBuy, which is your company related to this. AI fashion sourcing using AI to match rare high demand fashion items to clients through data and image analysis, or it could also be in in automating the pipeline in terms of their preferences or even matching them to specific styles or brands. That's my definition. What's your take on AI fashion sourcing?
Absolutely. So, speaking specifically to the MVP that we have developed, part of that is what I really want to solve with SourceBuy is the manual work that is happening behind the scenes. So, I think some people don't realize just how much work is involved in finding the pieces. So, there's two parts that I'm really honing in on. One part is because we work by request, which means that all day, every day clients are asking us for specific items. And presently, that's predominantly through Instagram. So, client will DM us and say, hey, Gab, can you find me this shoe in a size 39? I've been manually logging that into what we're referring to as our database. But that's taking one of my team members several hours a day to manually log all of those. So just one for the AI and implementing AI into SourceBuy is we're automating that process. So we're using image and text recognition to essentially just screenshot that request, drop it into SourceBuy. The AI, that image and text recognition, it picks up that it's a Chanel style. The client requests a size 39, it's brown, it's quilted, and it will automatically log it into our SourceBuy database. So that's one part that we're really honing in on, especially with the MVP and what we've developed so far. But the second part, and this is going to be a huge part of the coming months, is really leveraging that AI to assist with the search as well. Because of course, behind closed doors, we do a lot of manual searching, and there are times where the item is just online, but spend several hours to find that, whereas the AI can find it in seconds.
I really want to dig into this, but we are going to get a little bit more into SourceFi later. But I love what you're building. The second term gets into exactly what you're talking about, which is workflow automation. So streamlining repetitive tasks like logging, invoicing, tracking requests to free up time for client engagement. And you touched upon that a bit already, but if you have anything else that you like to add on that.
Essentially, that is truly the heart of SourceBuy. What was almost the moment from when the inception of me sitting down to really plan out the product memo and the original concept, it was automating that workflow automation. So that is really at the heart of what SourceBuy is and what we're using the AI to assist with.
Amazing. The last term here in Digital Decoded is machine learning, AI's ability to improve predictions and operations based on historical data, making sourcing smarter over time. Gab, as someone obviously who has been in fashion sourcing, we're going to get into the story and then your AI story, which sounds very futuristic the way that I put it. But I want to get into a little bit more about your journey first. Like I said before, I always do my DD before my podcast just because I want to bring a fresh and like a different perspective. We're going to talk a little bit more about your tech and AI side here, but I do want to highlight for the community and my audience for Digital Runway, your journey. And I went through 3 podcasts, as I mentioned before, listened to them, watched them as I was taking my walks just to make sure that I learned about you as well. But your journey is super interesting. You worked in the government, probably the best dressed person in the government, to luxury sourcing. We mentioned before earlier, you are an Aussie and now you're in LA. I want to get into your first fashion memory. Do you have an earliest moment where you realized you fell in love with fashion and knew that this was something that you were passionate about? Maybe not that you would get into it, but it was something that you were passionate about as a child.
I grew up in a really small town in Australia, so I certainly did not grow up even knowing what fashion was or thinking it was a career for me. Very small towns, we didn't have many stores. So truthfully, I didn't get into fashion until I graduated high school and went into the workforce, at that present time, I was quite young and I moved to Canberra, which is the capital city of Australia, which is where most of the federal government offices are. And so I was this young individual and I was earning quite a good amount of money. And at that time I started taking an interest and I almost just like escalated. I went straight to luxury. I didn't even have this phase of contemporary. I just suddenly was like, this is a new world for me. And I really love it and I can afford it and I can buy it for myself. And I felt really proud about that. So I think my earliest memories surprisingly aren't until post high school. And it was when I had my first government position and vividly remember I traveled to Sydney and I bought my first luxury handbag. It was the Celine Trapeze trapeze bag and my pride and joy. And I think speaking of being fashionable in the government, but it was at that time that I really took pride in dressing up. And several of my coworkers at the time said, "You're in the wrong field. You need to be in fashion. What are you doing?" And that was almost like my stepping stone to be like, I am really passionate about this. And this is the direction that I want to go in.
You made the jump not even to contemporary fashion. You just went from 180 luxury Celine trapeze bag that brings back so many memories. But I want to get into when you talk about that working in the government, what exactly did you do in the government?
This is probably the most interesting part of my story because I worked in compliance and in particular meant the government, and it was my job to search for information to obtain warrants. So it's crazy, and it's not a word I speak of often, but it's so funny that back then I was doing detective type, investigative type work, and then now I do that in the fashion realm. But essentially that is what I did for some time, and it was purely online, a different world. We had legal powers to be able to search for things, they're not the everyday person can search. Really, I think for me, it's interesting. That's the way that my career took me because I've always had that desire for the thrill of the hunt, the search, the I find it, I need to find it. And I think doing that in a more corporate environment and then translating that now into fashion, even words and language that I used in the government for that search or those searches, I use in my fashion sourcing work. So it's a crazy story. That's how it came about in my government days.
That's super interesting. So you basically applied your corporate government search knowledge to your now entrepreneurial fashion startup with AI. You're also a female founder in your own global sourcing business. But that's interesting because you're using like almost the corporate language speak and applying it to the fashion world. And you almost had this being a detective in the government world and applying it here. Besides language, what would you say are some of the aspects that you could say were key takeaways or learning or the foundation for you to be in corporate government, this sort of detective to a fashion detective?
Absolutely. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that I never went to college. So straight out of school, high school, I went straight into working for the government and I really worked my way up the ladder. So I started just as like an admin officer and that's when I went all the way up to compliance. But that to say is that I was about 17, 18, and I was working in a very corporate environment with individuals that were much older than me. So I matured very quickly and I was taught from a very young age that professionalism is key and relationships are key. So I think looking towards my sourcing work, my entire business is built off professionalism, relationship building, and the power in that. And I truly think I learned that a lot significantly from those more corporate early on days. And just even things as such as policies, procedures, structures. Government obviously has that pretty indented quite hard. And so I really took a lot of that into my entrepreneurial journey. And perhaps I wouldn't have had that knowledge if I hadn't have gone down that path.
What was that leap for you? Obviously, you are the best dressed person in the Australian government where you were working. You had your colleagues who were telling you, look, you need to be working in fashion. Do you remember your first fashion sourcing deal?
I do. I vividly do. So essentially what happened is once I left the government, I went on to this journey of fashion and I did not know at that time what I wanted to do. Fashion sourcing did not exist as an industry, let alone a career I even remotely thought of. So I dabbled in different areas. I dabbled in perhaps, and these were more internships at the time. So I was like, maybe it's buying, is it PR, is it just retail or sales manager? And I landed in that stylist realm. That's where I felt most natural, what felt most organic to me. But essentially that's when then I moved into fashion sourcing at a later period. And I guess that's where it started from that point. I didn't launch Gab Waller, the company, until June of 2018.
I'm curious about how you made that leap.
Oh,
You
yes.
met living in Australia, you moved to LA. What was that aha moment? Because obviously you were making a very comfortable salary, benefits, working in Australia, and it's also not your home country being an exit or moving to a different country. So tell us about a little bit about that journey of how you got there.
Absolutely. Launched Gab Waller in June of 2018. And at that time, I hadn't been working in the government for a couple of years. I was just dabbling within the fashion industry, not quite finding my feet. When I landed landed on the concept of fashion sourcing. I knew that this was it. And I knew very early on that I had found my purpose per se. But essentially on that journey, definitely within 6 months, I knew that my growth would come internationally. And the US was already becoming or on track to become my biggest market. It happened very quickly, surprisingly very quickly. So I knew that the natural next step for me would be to relocate to the United States, and always Los Angeles was the place, very similar to Australia. I knew that I would get settled quite quickly, but essentially that's what I did. I made the call pretty early on and I went through the visa process, successfully got that. Unfortunately, COVID hit, so I didn't end up coming until about a year later, but I just knew that essentially also with Australia, there's a certain roof that you can hit and you can't go any further than this. You've done as much as you can in this country, but with the US and with the States, I feel the roof never ends. Their opportunities are just endless. And so I knew that it was the right move to make.
And had you been traveling to LA before? Why LA versus New York?
Yeah, so I've always calling towards Los Angeles. I vividly remember even for my birthday, so this was pre everything, I was obsessed with Los Angeles. I was dying to come to Los Angeles for a trip, and my partner at the time gifted me a trip to LA. So I then, over the few years, I did do a couple of trips, and there was just something. Yeah, I've always been drawn to LA. I totally understand that New York is more of a fashion heavy scene, and I think being in fashion, that is essentially the place to be. But I think personally, I thrive in Los Angeles. I love hot weather. I love outdoors, very healthy, active lifestyle, very similar to Sydney, which is where I've spent most of my adult life. I knew that LA was where I would be most comfortable and fit.
Yeah, the weather is a big selling point for sure. And
Yeah.
obviously, a lot of Collins are from Hollywood as well. So it makes sense in terms of proximity. If you are joining the live stream, then please drop any questions that you have for Gab. We'll address them later. If you are watching the playback, feel free to drop your questions. I want to get into a little bit about some of the fun stuff before we get into the technical business, which is sourcing stories. What was the most rewarding piece that you sourced?
I can't go past the Celine coat story for Rosie
Oh,
Huntington.
that, yes.
Yeah, story truly is like that pivotal moment in my career that I think at the time it appeared as overnight success. And that really wasn't what it was. Overnight, I became global name and press picked up on it. But there was a lot that happened prior to that. So I wouldn't refer to it as an overnight success per se, but Rosie posting that code, not only on her stories, but on her feed, also making a mention of myself and my services, truly changed my life, but certainly the trajectory of my career. I always look back and wonder, would it have grown as quickly as it did if that moment didn't happen? So that happened in January of 2019 is when I woke up in the morning. I remember it like it was yesterday and woke up to my phone just truly blowing up.
That's amazing. I remember listening to that story on another podcast that you were on, and just Rosie being a girl's girl, that she's actually willing to give recognition where recognition is due and using her platform to actually amplify you, which is very generous and unfortunately may not always happen. Yeah, Rosie, girl's girl.
Absolutely. I always say to her, I will be thanking you forever and you'll be singing me thank you because I'm just forever in debt to it. Yeah.
But to your point, you've been working and pounding the pavement, do your sourcing. To your point, it wasn't an overnight success. It's just that you received that amplification that put you on a global map. It just had a lot more legs to it. So I love that you actually mentioned that point. I want to get into just a fun one. What was a request that just completely blew your mind? Are you serious? Are you asking me this? But this is going to be so much fun.
That's a great question. I'm going to go with, oh, that's a really good question. Sometimes I get interesting ones of non-fashion requests. So I think over the years it's changed. Sometimes I get children's toys or children's games. One at present that perhaps we're not surprised by, but I get a lot of requests for Rode, the beauty line, Hailey Bieber's line, and specifically her phone cases. So again, I think when people think of course it is fashion sourcing, and I would consider accessories a big part of my job. So phone accessories does fall into that. But I also hate to say no. So when I do get requests for those, I'm like, I could challenge. I will see if I can find it. And I have embraced those interesting requests at time.
That's so interesting. Yeah, the Rode phone cases with her lip balm, those were definitely blowing up.
Blowing up. I think a little bit accessible now. I haven't checked of late, but yes, there was a moment where I was like, everyone needed that phone case. It's very interesting to even watch consumer behavior over the years and to see products that accelerate in demand
Yeah.
and then accelerates again. It's really interesting.
When I first saw that come out, I just thought it was super interesting because it's a tech accessory, right? That is made into a beauty and fashion statement that is something very simple. Like tech doesn't necessarily need to be something absolutely crazy like machine learning. I mean, I love NFC chips and blockchain authentication, basically in a nutshell, to be able to say, hey, the vintage Chanel bag was verified by Chanel. So it's actually real. And you could follow it along publicly, the journey of whose hands it was in, something like this. But it could just be something very simple, like a phone accessory, or even Balenciaga did a partnership with Ledger. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like cold storage and like crypto wallets, but it's very interesting the takes and how fashion and beauty is going to step into the world where it's the digitalization and adding technology into their brand ecosystem.
I agree. I agree. It's going to be really interesting, especially the luxury brands who are really like adapting to it more and embracing it.
I do write a newsletter. It's called the Digital Runway. It's an email newsletter on beauty, fashion, tech, and I've covered those stories before. I've been super passionate about. We're going to get into more of the AI side of your AI powered innovation, source by your journey from concept to creation. So let's start at the inception or like the beginning of things from idea to execution. When did you realize or encounter AI?
For that's a great question. So I think going back to the original concept of source buy, so it's been something that I've truthfully been thinking about for several years now. I have notes in my phone of just ideas of saying I need this all in one platform. But it wasn't
Mhm.
until I sat down in March of this year, that's when the original concept really came together, that the AI came into play. So truthfully speaking, I think as early as like last year, AI
Mhm.
was not on my radar. It wasn't until this year really honed in on it and I could see growing and obviously only going to increase in growth that I said, okay, let's explore this and let's bring this into sourcing. And I think for me, to me, it was just, it was a no brainer. What is happening, but what people don't realize is happening behind the doors in fashion sourcing is that manual work. And I think what I've always struggled with is that why is this taking so long for one single piece? All day, every day, we receive about 50 to 100 requests. And within Gab Waller, so speaking specifically to my company, we can only fulfill about 30% of those at present based off the platforms that we use. So I know bringing AI in will increase that tenfold. That's where the original idea came in. And then I do not have a technical background. So really having to learn a lot throughout this year, even within the AI world of how does it work? The MVP that we developed, we worked with an agency, an AI agency in New York City called Head Start. Completely recommend them. They were absolutely incredible. And they really also educated me throughout the process. And I learned a lot. It was a 6-week sprint, but I learned so much in that process.
There's so many different directions that we can go. And I'm thinking about the next question here. I'll let you take a step back for a second and then get into all the different layers that you just shared about. Were you using any AI tools in your pipeline in terms of your process of sourcing, right? Because currently, right now, people will message you on Instagram, I'm sure on WhatsApp or iMessage as well. It's consolidating all that information, building a workflow. And I know that you've also gone to the process of expanding by hiring, which I know is a journey for you as well. But were you integrating any tools and I previous to starting SourceBuy?
Nothing, not a single one. It truly, at present, everything is done manual. We do our two platforms that we essentially run the company on is Asana and Monday.com. Both fantastic platforms. Couldn't recommend them highly enough, but they're not built for what we use it for. We are a fashion sourcing company and we've made do with the way that we use it, but no AI at present. And I think what I'm not surprised by, but speaking to a lot of other sources in the space, before I even went on this journey, I worked with them and I set up calls and I said, are we having the same pain points? What are your pain points? Where are you logging your requests? And it's so interesting to see that how outdated our platforms are. A lot of sources are logging their requests in Excel spreadsheets, they're logging it in Notion, or some are just simply keeping photos in their photo albums on their phones. I think overall, because our industry is so new, we only only really have been around for 6 years, it's not a significant amount of time, that we have not adapted or adopted AI in any capacity within fashion sourcing at present.
Interesting. And what was that point where you were thinking to yourself, okay, I've learned about AI. This could actually change what I'm doing. And then what are the steps that you actually took? Because you mentioned that you're working with an AI agency in New York, but let's shed the light a little bit on the journey in between for you.
Absolutely. So in March is when I sat down with my lead investor. He's been quite hands on throughout the process. His name is Amir. He is quoted in the Vogue article. He's been very active in terms of the conversation on SourceBuy. But we sat down and really planned out the original product memo. We worked through the current flow for Gab Waller from start to finish. And we realized we use about 6 different platforms for one order. And so that concept of streamlining it into an all-in-one platform really came together. Next step from there is essentially I'm a visual person. I'm a creative person at heart. So I need to physically see something. I need to physically see the AI at work. So our next step is we did on board with this agency Head Start, and they had a 6-week scope of work. And that was essentially to build our MVP. And is really that key first part of using the AI to log the requests into our database. So I've seen full on AI at work using the image and text recognition. And that was a really key moment for me to see it in action. And so from there, once we got the MVP, that's when the next step was to announce publicly, which was what kind of came out with the business. And now we are hiring for our founding engineer to essentially build out phase 2 of the platform and get it ready for launch.
So exciting. So your whole journey has culminated and came about through detective work. Like I feel like there's a connective thread here, detective work in government, detective work in fashion sourcing, and detective work because you had very big pain point of realizing that the whole process was super manual. With SourceBuy, is that something in terms of, I guess there's the MVP and there's also future plan, whatever you're open to sharing, but would this be something that other fashion sourcers can use, but also from a B2C perspective of like fashion sourcers to your customers to bring in that pipeline? And how do you see that coming to the market?
Absolutely. Yes. So from day one, I've always been focused on ensuring that all sources have access to SourceBuy. I think for me, the reasoning for that, because one question that has come up is why don't you just build it for Gab and your internal team can use it? And I say, my response to that is that because I really feel as though I did pioneer this industry, being the first one in Gab Waller fashion sourcing, it did not exist. Fashion source of the term, no one was using that. I feel very passionate about protecting our industry, looking after our industry, growing and scaling our industry. So my perception, my thought process is if I rise, we all rise together. And I truthfully, my objective and my goal is I just want fashion sourcing to get bigger and better, bigger and better. So the only way to do that is to really open this up to the entire industry. So that's been really key for me in building this out and having those conversations with sources who will have access to this. And it's really interesting. It's of course I understand throughout any company, you have to pivot, you have to introduce different things, everything like that. And I'm sure throughout our journey, as we even continue to build this out, there may be a moment in which we may bring the customer into SourceBuy. But at present time, as I speak, it is a platform that is purely more B2B that's only happening behind the scenes. The customer journey continues and stays where it is, which is predominantly Instagram, WhatsApp, and email.
Love this because I'm very much about community over competition, which in the fashion industry is something that can be a little bit challenging. I think Devil Wears Prada 2 is coming out. There's a lot of people who talk about the industry. There's still gems of human beings who work in the industry, but because it's so hard to crack into, a lot of times there's a lot of big personalities as well. But the fact that you're willing to foster inclusivity and a tool that will actually help your peers, actually about your character, to be honest, Gab, at the end of the day. And I'm sure you've had conversations with other colleagues and friends who are sourcers within the industry. As you socialize this idea with them, what's been their response?
Definitely excitement. And I would say relief as well. I think it is something that they too, we're all feeling the same pain points together. Speaking again specifically for Gab Waller, I have 100% come to the conclusion that I can't grow or scale my company any with the tech that we are building with SourceBuy. And the reason for that is it's a buzzing business. We have a lot of inbound requests from clients. We service thousands and thousands of clients, but I need to find more. And that's our slogan for SourceBuy is find more. But speaking to other sources in the space, they too want to grow and scale. And there is just so much opportunity here. We haven't even really touched the surface of how big this industry can get. And I think on that note, even conversations, I've been having a lot of conversations with all sorts of individuals over the past couple of months since announcing SourceBuy. And just yesterday, I was speaking with an angel investor and she goes, I am your target market. I would use a sourcer, but I've never heard of fashion sourcing. And I'm like, you are like, that is my exact reason. Like, we still have work to do of even marketing. I've never done extensive marketing. And so there are so many still class customers that can tap into sourcing and we just need to build it and grow the name and grow the industry as a whole.
I've never heard a specific term for this in English, but as I mentioned before, I'm Korean American and also spent over 10 years in Asia. But there's a lot of people like all around the world, almost like this network that would actually source for Asia and also specifically for China. It was more for the deal than for the exclusivity of the item, which I feel like is another layer into what you're building out, which I'm very excited that you're putting this together and building SourceBuy and leveraging AI in an industry that is a little bit slower sometimes to adopt tech. And you're really running at the forefront of this. You're that detective, again, that connective thread of being a detective. It's super interesting.
Yeah, always have my finger on the pulse. I think the one common thread throughout my career, especially within sourcing, is just constantly being one step ahead. And I think that's part of the detective work, having those eyes and ears everywhere, like being really proactive and active in that space. That's what I love. I even wrote recently, I feel like the emoji, the detective emoji I use it frequently, but that is my brand and my career vibe.
I feel like your emoji, if I would say, actually, maybe let me ask you this question. If you could pick three emojis to describe yourself, what would it be?
I know hands down. It is detective emoji, the fairy to be like fairy fashion godmother. I get that one a lot. And then I do love the two love hearts. I think I really pride myself on being a kind, generous, easy to speak to person. And I feel like that the heart emoji I really love. I think those three emojis sums up who I am.
I love that. This is actually a great question. I never really thought to ask this, but as soon as you said detective emoji, I was like, I could guess, but I would love to hear what you have said. I was thinking you'd be detective emoji, glasses emoji, because you always have these very iconic glasses. And then the other one that I was actually thinking that I personally love is the disco ball, because I feel like you're in between this like physical world and digital world and connecting the two.
I love that. That I have to take that. I have to change my emoji.
Just add it in the mix.
I have so many pairs of glasses. I've worn glasses since I was a little girl. So I've always changed to a million different frames. So the glasses one's a good one, actually.
I love this. This complete side now, not part of this conversation, but have you tried the Ray-Ban Meta glasses?
I haven't.
I'm
Should
gonna
I?
send Yes, I'm gonna send you information afterwards with a couple of different things. You could do virtual try it online. It's like obviously the very iconic Wayfarer style, but there's AI actually embedded into it. So I think that you would have a ball, like literally balling out on this and have a pop-up in LA right now until December 31st. So I will send you that information for our call so you can take a look. I haven't gone because I'm not in LA, but I'd love to hear if you go, what your experience was like.
Please send us me. Actually, now they said it, I think I know exactly what building it is. I'm sorry.
But you're good, you're good. I'm just grabbing the glasses for you.
I thought someone was like at the door. Yes, please show me. I think I know where the building is. It's like a blue Meta building, and I drove past it recently, and I was like, it might be that might be the pop up.
I love them. I use them for content, for music, for calls, even for FaceTime calls, but you could also POV show it from your glasses. My gripe is that I only have a tan case. They have three styles right now, which you could try, but I like the headliners, which are more round. There's Zyler and obviously the Wayfarer that you could try.
Wait, you have inspired me. Please send it to me. I want it. This is amazing.
I like them. I just think that I love this style.
Yeah, I would 1,000% wear them.
I'm definitely gonna say, I'll send you more information that we could talk about it afterwards. But I love sharing wearable tech and it's super exciting because it's actually a chic pair of glasses, not some clunky, ugly head from a tech bro trying to make it fashion. Like they actually partnered with the right source to do it. Anyone watching live, please drop your questions on LinkedIn. Otherwise, if you're watching the playback on you, then make sure to drop your questions. I will be checking them. Want to future proof your brand in beauty, fashion, tech, AI, and business? You are in the right place. Welcome to the Digital Runway. Whether someone is working in the industry or just obsessed with beauty and fashion, every week I write a newsletter, 3 pieces of news under Runway Radar and the Runway Diaries, which is behind the scenes. The newest edition is Janey's AI edit with ChatGPT prompt. I give all this information away completely for free. Check out the Digital Runway email newsletter in the caption. I want to get into Vogue. You have a relationship with them. The Vogue business article. You also have a column that you're writing in Vogue. How has that journey been for you? Because Vogue is like the pinnacle when it comes to fashion. And this article definitely, I'm sure, gave you a lot of opportunities and new conversations related to source by, but also your fashion sourcing and this column as well. So walk us through your Vogue journey.
Yes, absolutely. So if we go back to, I went to New York for a trip and I was just doing a lot of meetings whilst I was there. And I had a meeting with the Vogue team. And truthfully, I'm certainly having to jog my memory as to how that was even set up, or like who it was through, which team member. But I've always been semi friendly with the team on social. I thought I was going in for a little bit of a meet and greet and to just say hello. And we sat down in quite a big, large conference room, and they essentially pitched the idea to me of having a monthly column. And I vividly remember being in that moment and trying not to look so excited because could not believe I was being asked this question. But yeah, it was obviously an immediate yes from me. And it happened relatively quickly after that. We finished up the meeting. I would say my first article went live about a month later. And essentially what I write is I have a monthly column. It goes up usually within the first 2 weeks of the month. And it's it's called the hot list. And it's the 20 most requested pieces that I've received requests for from that past month. And I love it. I have so much fun writing it. And from the Vogue team, they have been so generous in giving me a lot of creative freedom in terms of what I write about, what the topic. Each month I write about a specific theme that I may be seeing in my request, that I'm seeing in general. And they've always given me full creative freedom to say, you write what you want, you link what you want. So that's been amazing. And so it's been over a year now. I'm actually about to submit my December one. So they'll be going live most likely next week.
Exciting. Yeah, I went through your column and I read through it. And I just love the way that you use your words. So I'm excited to take a look at December. So yes, anyone who is watching, please make sure to connect with Gavin, especially check out this list because it is packed with some gems, whether or not you knew about it or you literally had no idea how this got on the list. It's just a very interesting read. I just want to switch gears and get into the fun section, which funny enough was inspired by Vogue 73 question. I call 21 closet confessions. I love alliteration and I wanted to do a rapid fire segment because even though actually I stand on business, it's important to have fun because we are doing beauty and fashion at the end of the day, not just in a boardroom. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. One, let's start easy. Coffee or matcha?
Matcha. I don't drink coffee and I never have, which just made me crazy. Yes.
That is really crazy.
Or
Also,
never
all the
coffee.
wow, never ever, zero.
Yep, zero.
Or like the smell or what's the tea?
Honestly, I just have never got into it. I love the smell of it, but I never needed it. It's so interesting. But I will say every morning I have a smoothie. I make my own smoothie and that is my coffee. I cannot function without my morning smoothies. I do still need something, but it is a smoothie instead of coffee.
My jaw is still like on the ground. I love coffee. I force myself to drink matcha and add collagen powder just for skincare and antioxidants.
Yes, I matcha is something I love the taste of matcha, and it's just something that if I'm going because obviously going out for coffee is so frequent. I hate
Yeah.
not having something to order, so I will drink a matcha.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. How do you define your personal style?
Personal style. I would say that I'm chic. Chic is like my keyword that I use quite frequently with describing my style. Sophisticated, but also effortless. I like being professional and very well presented, but then that little effortless side coming out, which is pretty relevant within Los Angeles, quite laid back here.
3 words to describe describe Aussies?
Kind, approachable, and friendly. It's so interesting. Like, just if you walk down the street in Australia, everyone's like, strangers will just say hello to each other. I miss that.
Yeah. If I saw you in the street, I'll definitely say hi to you. Go to beauty or skincare products.
I also love collagen, and every morning I have this collagen. It's by a brand called Agent Nature. It's best of the best. I've been having it for 3 years. My nails won't stop growing. My hair is in its prime. So yes, collagen in my smoothie every morning.
Okay. I'm going to have to take a note of that because you
Yeah.
said hair growth and we're all wanting to have more fuller hair.
Yes, definitely.
A spicy hot take on the fashion industry.
Spicy hot take on the fashion industry. I'd say that it was something I was just speaking to my team yesterday, is that I think there is that understanding or belief that, speaking in the sourcing industry, that it is cutthroat. It's very collaborative. We have really good relationships with other sources. So I think that is something that some people are maybe sometimes surprised about looking from the outside in. But I love our industry so much, and I think it's very collaborative. It is not in any way cutthroat.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I love that though. Community for sure is very important. Top three sources for industry news.
Great question. I would say Vogue Business of Fashion. And there is a newsletter that I love that's written by Lauren Sherman for Puck. She used to be a Business of Fashion and she went out to do her own newsletter. It's just one that it's very industry focused. She has great insights as to what's within fashion.
Hopefully we can add the digital runway to your list in the future.
Yes. I have a full digital runway.
Um, your best advice for female founders.
Don't let no deter you. So rejection is redirection. I strongly believe in that. I think of my careers at times when I hurt, when someone said no to me, I didn't a specific thing that I wanted really bad in terms of maybe it was a career decision. I just think that everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that, but that rejection is redirection. So just keep going for that yes, because it's out there.
I love it. Must have wearable tech or tech gadget.
Maybe the sunglasses or the glass that you've mentioned. I think that's
Yeah.
one that otherwise I'm everything Apple. I'm an Apple girl. Anything that they put out, I would most likely buy.
Same here. Whose closet would you want to raid?
Whose closet? I think that Morgan Stewart is someone who I think has absolutely gorgeous style, extremely chic. So perhaps hers, or I also love like the style of Sophia Richie Grange. I think she would have a gorgeous closet.
Oh, these are like all great choices. Who is your favorite designer of all time?
Designer of all time, I'm going to go with perhaps at present, I'm going to say like Mrs. Prada for Miu Miu, just because it is like Miu Miu is my favorite brand. So anything that's happening there, I'm very into.
I love that. From the Mary Janes and the rhinestones, like you could also mix it up because I'm more like, how do I say this? A little bit more grunge leather studs as much as I am a little bit girly or even just to mix it up together, but so iconic.
Yes. Yeah, they're absolutely killing it too. My best selling brand of 2024 is Miu Miu.
What do you miss most about Australia?
Family and friends, definitely. I'm heading back there next Tuesday and I'm so excited to see everyone. Yeah, I'm very close with my family, so definitely miss them a lot.
That'll be an amazing trip back home for the holidays. Favorite movie or TV show for fashion or style inspiration?
Oh, goodness, that is a good one. I'm going to go with maybe it's because it's so old school, but everyone I know is trying to recreate the iconic Clueless closet. Abs Clueless is one that jumps to mind. And it'll be really interesting to see what happened there. I know there's a few companies that are on the race to create it.
Yes. Most influential book you've read?
I'm going to go with I love Stephen Bartlett's podcast, Diary of a CEO. So his book is fantastic. It's really good, some really good takeaways. It's a recent read of mine, but I love it. I definitely recommend.
I'm definitely have to check it out. I've listened to his podcast, but I haven't read the book.
Really good. You'll need a highlighter because like you just want to highlight everything. It's some really good takeaways.
Yeah, I love that podcast and also how I built this. Like you can just learn so many gems from other founders and business entrepreneurs.
I agree. I love listening for that reason.
Your favorite fashion item in your closet now, or maybe that you don't know where it is or you gave away or sold?
I'm going to go with, so because the Celine coat has such a special moment in my career, I sourced one for myself and it's definitely that piece. I think that coat is so iconic to me and special to me. So I could never sell it.
I love that because it's such an emotional tie, but also part of your career and your journey.
1000%. I even joked, I was like, maybe frame it. Yes. Maybe one day. It's very,
Yeah.
so I need a big wall for it, but it's pretty iconic.
Or at least display it on a mannequin in a very prominent place in your home or your office.
That's not a bad idea. Yes. I like
I'm a marketer storyteller by trade. So I'm always like thinking about, okay, how do you use this as a storytelling piece, a marketing piece, get people to work with you anyways? What is something that people may not know about you?
you may not know about me. That's a great question. I would say that I think maybe I'm a Sagittarius. So I think that I do have a very people know I'm very ambitious, but I do have a fire sign. So I think for me, I'm like very ruthless, if that's the right word, of going after what I want and not stopping until I get it. And I think some people may not know and always show that, but I love being a fire sign. I love being a go getter.
I love that. You definitely are a go-getter based type of work that you're doing and building AI. You're wearing red, so I have to ask the question, red lipstick or no lipstick?
I'm a no lipsticks girl. Anytime I'm like very neutral. I think for some reason, I don't think red lipstick suits me. I've tried it and I don't think it looks good on me, but I love it on others. So even right now, I just have just a natural little gloss. But yes, I've never really gotten into red lipstick.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because you wore red. So I was like, it's very festive. Red is one of my favorite colors. But I noticed that your makeup is actually very neutral most of the time.
Very, yes, very. I do know when I do need to get a little bit more glam and I love that experience, but my everyday is very natural.
Or clothes speak for the whole energy and aura and the whole vibes.
Clothes to shine.
Yeah. Your ultimate power outfit.
Probably similar to what I've got on now. I've got a bit of a big day of meetings. So it's like a nice blazer, strong blazer. I'm just wearing like black pants and then a nice, easy, comfortable heel. I do think that a heel makes such a difference in the way I myself and show up even in the conversation. It just gives me that extra boost of confidence.
Yes, I agree. It definitely changes your whole mentality and stature. If not fashion, what would you be doing?
I would be doing some sort of detective work, perhaps maybe like a criminal detective. I remember I enjoyed that in high school, but definitely detective. Always want to be doing something that's on the hunt and searching for something.
I just thought of a word for you. Fashion for rent.
Fashion. I like power hats. There's
As
your
you were talking, it just, yeah, I'm a marketer and brand storytelling, but as soon as you said that, I was like, fashion forensics. I think you need to take that. I will wholeheartedly give that one to you. Best advice you've ever received.
best advice I've ever received. Oh, that's a really good question. I would say, oh, this is one that I've been using a lot lately is done is better than perfect. I think
Mm,
a little bit of a perfectionist. So sometimes I will hesitate putting things out until what I would consider it to be perfect, but done is better than perfect. So whatever you're working on, just submit. It doesn't need to be absolutely flawless.
I could definitely relate to that one. Last question. One word to describe the future of fashion.
I am going to say one word for the future of fashion. It is automation is what's really going to soar in this industry. And I think we're going to be seeing so much more of it in 2025 and beyond from all parts. I think the way that we've been shopping to this date is outdated and it's time for some innovation. And I think AI is going to really transform it.
1000%. Gab, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much. It was so fun and interesting to hear your journey as a fashion sourcer or a detective across different industries. Obviously, what you're building with Source By. How can people follow you?
Yes. So my personal Instagram is Gab Waller. And then my company, my two companies is gabwaller.com and also now sourced by.
Exciting. And I always ask this question because, again, community over competition, but what's the best way anyone watching or listening to this podcast can support you?
I'd say so Instagram is definitely my bread and butter. So following my journey on Instagram, Gab Waller is something where I'm most active with what's going on in my personal life. So following me along on Instagram at Gab Waller would be fantastic.
Amazing. And just last but not least, if to catch the replay, it will be available on Sunday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you are looking for news, insights, even ChatGPT tips or AI tools, I do write about them on a weekly basis on the Digital Runway. Future proof yourself by staying ahead with us right here on the Digital Runway. Thank you.